Hey everyone, just a little bit after 3 o'clock. Welcome to our folks that have gathered here on Zoom with us for our online town hall. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on Facebook Live. Glad you're here. We're with Nicole Hamm. She's a candidate for Jacksonville City Council District 4. If you're here with us on Zoom, please mute your microphone and use the chat box for questions. If you're tuning in via Facebook, I'll try to monitor the comments on Facebook and feed them to Nicole and her guest, Alisha Teague, during the Q&A part of our gathering. And if you're new to Zoom, go ahead and just hover on your screen and you can locate the controls that allow you to mute your microphone plus find the chat box. We have an agenda today because it's going to go by really fast. These town halls always do. We'll introduce the topic, we'll have a presentation of the topic by Nicole and a little bit of discussion with her special guest, Alisha Teague, who's a mental health counselor, followed up with some question and answers from everyone who's gathered with us. So mental wellness has been a difficult time for many of us, particularly in 2020. You know, staying upbeat is going to require some strategies, and for many of us it already has. For Nicole, that means finding ways to safely engage with voters. She's been biking District 4 to get out and safely meet voters in her district. And to de-stress, like many of us, she finds joy in spending time with her dog. Getting together with family and friends often has included new protocols for all of us, including when we go out and enjoy eating in local District 4 restaurants like Johnny Angel's. Nicole's goal is to remain connected to our community and to support mental wellness. Not long ago, mental health was a taboo topic. Nicole is a candidate who is willing to engage in difficult conversations and share experiences. She's a candidate of change. And with today's topic on mental wellness, I'm going to hand this over to her, stop the screen share, and get this rolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. As always, Lisa is one of our amazing staff behind the scenes, managing communications and all things. And, you know, 2020 has just been a year. And I think that regardless of party, regardless of age, regardless of demographic, like it's just been a year. And, you know, with COVID-19, I think it's important that all the things and all of the noise that we continue to hear via news and social media and all that things, that we just take a moment and check in with how we're showing up as individuals and being able to notice when we are not as strong in our mental wellness and what it looks like and what it could turn into. And there's two sides of the coin, right? It can be a positive experience and you can recognize something and begin to create new habits to improve that wellness and well-being. Or, you know, we end up in a spot where we don't necessarily want to be in. So I'm so honored to have Alisha here to talk about, you know, those types of tips and strategies and things that to be aware of when we speak about our mental health. So really quickly, I'm just going to kind of go over about mental health in Jacksonville specifically. And I know Alisha will be able to elaborate more on exactly what mental health is, but it includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, how we think, how we feel, how we act. All of that is tied into our mental health and our mental well-being. In Jacksonville, since COVID-19, there has been an increase in student depression. Our kids are craving connection, and they have been thrown to a different way of living that they never had before. And that I was reading on the Florida Department of Health website about how this number is so important. You know, we as adults have a lot of stress and a lot of things going on as far as work, family, and all of those things. But adolescents are experiencing that stress too, and it's just different in a way that we've been so far removed from. So I just wanted to, you know, acknowledge that. And then, of course, our senior population. The seniors that are isolated in nursing facilities or rehabilitation facilities, they're craving that connection and human interaction as well. And that lack of is really starting to take a toll on their mental health. there was a statistic that males aged 75 to 85 have contemplated suicide within the past 6 months. And that's just a number that I don't want to hear. That's not something that I ever want to think about. And so I know that we as a society have to do better about having these conversations and having that open dialogue to talk to people and let them know that they are supported and be able to support their mental health and well-being. You know, we are a military town. My parents are veterans, my father from the Navy and my mother from the Army. And we have a population of veterans that are also struggling. And, you know, that's even past COVID-19. That's coming home from all of what they've seen and experienced. And 12.2% of Duval County's residents are veterans. And they're affected differently. And there's different resources, but there's resources that are either inaccessible, or B, there's a lot of misinformation about how they go about getting benefits, how they go about being, you know, back fully ingrained in society in a civilian way. And, you know, we in Jacksonville, we're considered a happy city. I'm not sure if you've seen articles, but on Forbes, we're usually at the top of the list of places to move to and things to do. And specifically as a young person and a young professional, we are getting an influx of young people here. And one of the things that I found interesting in my research was that it's hard. This young adulthood, that transition and being on your own, you know, having that financial responsibility, and then you're kind of removed from where you've been or where you've studied or the communities that you've already created. That has varied too. About 16% of young professionals and adolescents that move here struggle with mental health issues and in that adjustment and in getting ingrained into the Jacksonville society. So, you know, it's just something that we need to do better about talking about. And very recently on September 8th, City Council passed and recognized September Suicide Awareness Month. And this couldn't be more appropriate as we're wrapping up September to kind of close out with a reminder that mental health is important, and we're all going through something, right? My grandfather used to say, in all things, be kind, right? You can be anything in the world, Nicole, be kind. And, you know, Dak Prescott came out talking about his depression, and that's something that I personally struggled with as well. And it's just so important that people here know that they are supported and that they have the resources and the tools to improve and increase their mental wellness. And I know Alisha will talk more about that, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of background and a little bit of context of what we're seeing and experiencing in Jacksonville. And specifically in District 4, when we do phone calls, I always make a point to ask, how are you? You know, like, how are you doing? And especially to the older voters, I know things are a little bit different now. So like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And this woman just broke my heart a couple of weeks ago. She said, I miss my best friend. My best friend's been in the hospital for the past 2 weeks and I can't see her, I can't touch her, and I miss my best friend. And she went on this whole story and vent about it, and we just sat on the phone and I listened to her. And she said, I just had to unload that. And I said, that's why I'm here. That's exactly why I'm here. And that's why I'm so committed to doing the work for not only the residents of District 4, but all of Jacksonville, to know that you have someone that you can unload on if that's what you need. I personally don't know what it's like to be so isolated in a way that you're so familiar with. And my heart just breaks knowing that people are experiencing that right now. And so I wanted to open up this conversation, and I am not licensed to talk about anything mental health. So I'm so glad that I found Alisha to speak about these types of things. And I'm going to throw it to her to speak about mental health, her experience, and how we can notice and recognize and support when our mental health and well-being is not at 100%.
Well, I want to first off thank you for having me. It is very important for us to check in on our mental health. It's been such a stigma for so long. You know, people tend to think, oh, you're crazy if you see a therapist, but there are things that are not even a disorder that you can see a therapist for. And mental health impacts, like you said earlier, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act. So if I think I'm worthless, I'm more than likely going to feel depressed. And so I'm going to isolate. I'm not going to take care of myself. I'm going to shut down. I might be irritable. I might lose my appetite. There are all these things that I'm no longer taking care of myself because I think I'm worthless. But if I think that I'm worth something, I may start to feel confident, and I may start to connect with others and take care of myself. So it's important that we check in with ourselves and be honest with ourselves and other people, like how we think, how we feel, you know, so that we can be healthy in this crazy, unpredictable time of this pandemic. One of the biggest things the pandemic has done, even though there are some negatives, you know, we know the unemployment rate is higher, suicide rates are higher, addiction is higher, everything is higher. But we also are in America where society is on a go, 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 and the pandemic forces you to slow down. And it forces you to be in your head and think about all of that maybe unresolved trauma or struggles or things that you hadn't thought about before. So I think it's important that we normalize a discussion. When someone says, how are you? Instead of saying, I'm fine or I'm okay, those are not feelings. Those are states of mind. How are you really feeling? Hey, I'm struggling today. You know, let's support each other in that, you know. So go ahead. Go ahead.
I love that. Like, I love that. You're right. I say it just because it's the thing that I was taught to say. And like, there's some days where I'm just like, you know, I'm not doing too hot. I'm struggling with my job, or I'm struggling with running for office. And like, to your point, that's so important that we speak straight about how we feel in that moment, because it's just a feeling. And I think that, at least in my therapy sessions, I've been told I get attached to feelings. I get attached to them, and it's like, it's just temporary, that you can feel sad in this moment and you can be happy in the next. So I love that.
I mean, it's important to know that feelings are not facts. They can be changed. And that's one of the biggest distortions that we live with is, if I feel depressed, I must forever be depressed. If I feel stupid, I must be stupid, versus I'm struggling with a decision I made. I'm struggling with a feeling. I'm struggling with a relationship. I'm struggling with something, and focusing on that, you know. So.
I love it. You know, speaking from my experience, I was diagnosed with depression when I was 17. And it has been something that has always been a part of my life. I've had ebbs and flows. And I used to struggle with speaking about that publicly, because I never wanted to get the, oh my God, she's been on medication for depression. She's crazy. Something's wrong with her. She's never going to be fit to lead, to do this, to do that. And I have grown into being okay with, like, I have ebb and flows, right? Like, there's been years that I've been at the top of my game, and I wasn't taking anything. And there's been times where I've needed a little bit of extra support to get through that day. And like, speaking candidly has helped me. And I've also noticed that it's been able to help others, because I had another voter I was speaking to. She said, girl, me too. She said, I just keep the bottle now because I don't know when I'm going to need it or when I'm not. And I just thought, like, that was so powerful, because I sometimes get so into my head of, it's just me. No one else has these problems. It's just me. There's something wrong with me. I did something wrong. I'm equipped to do those things. And the truth of the matter is, like you said, it's feelings aren't facts. And talking about it and finding those niches that allow you to be stronger in your mental health are so important. I'm an active yoga teacher and practitioner. And it helps to be able to move my body. It helps me to be able to focus on something that's not work or campaign. It helps me to be with the dog and just petting him and having some type of solace and comfort from an animal. So, you know, what are other things and other strategies for people to look at as far as, you know, improving their mental health and their well-being?
Well, obviously, first off, therapy. That is going to be the number one thing I'm going to plug, because like I said, it's not just if, you know, like you've admitted that you've had depression, so did I. I've had PTSD, I live with anxiety, you know, and I do my own work individually, so the therapy helps with that. But some of us may be going through a breakup or getting laid off or you're moving, you know, especially if you're military. I was a military brat as well, so I know like how families move around. So if you're moving, or we've lost a loved one, so there's so many things that we can go to therapy about. And sometimes you don't even know what you're going about, but it's nice to have that unbiased support that's going to help you figure out what you need to feel better. And so we can do that. The biggest thing, especially with the pandemic, is limiting our media. It feels like every week we're hearing bad news. You know, someone's died, or more corona deaths, or if there's politics stuff, there's a lot of things. It's very emotionally draining no matter what you believe in. So maybe limiting that time, you know, instead of watching news all day, or take social media breaks, take a few days off, get into nature. You know, some people are not going back to the gyms yet. So there's parks, go on a trail, you know, download some free workout exercises. There's CrossFit.com, they're offering that. Meditation's very helpful, trying to get back into the moment. It's very easy for us to feel anxious when we're worried about tomorrow, or feeling depressed when we're thinking about yesterday. So if we focus on now, focus on what we can control. We can't control like the pandemic and everything that's going to happen, but we can control what we're going to do. You know, if you're sitting in bed all day because you need a rest, sometimes it's okay. Have a mental health day. But then, you know, make some plans to get up and do something. I'm a huge dog lover. I always have my dog. Anybody who knows me knows how much I love my dog. So I'm going to spend time with her, or my boyfriend, or my family. And, you know, a lot of us had to, myself including, jump into working from home. So it's very important that you make a space that is designated only for work. And then you set boundaries. I'm only going to work between these hours. When we're home, it's so much easier to just keep working, but take that break. You know, that would be some of my biggest tips. Getting in tune with things that you didn't have time to before. Now you have the time. Check in with yourself and with your family and friends, you know, schedule FaceTime dates if you're not comfortable yet going out. You know, just making sure that we stay connected. That's what keeps people healthy. That's what keeps people sober. So like if you're lonely, you know, join some online groups. There's psychcentral.com, where it talks all about different disorders and quizzes, but there's also a help section, and there's a forum, and it's old school like message boards, but you get to talk to people, and you can talk about anything you think about is on there. And maybe you don't want to talk about stuff today, so there's a creative corner where you can read like poems and essays, or there's the Mighty, or there's Meetup, which was around before the pandemic, but maybe you're into knitting and somebody else is into knitting, and you can meet up or join in a Facebook group. There are so many different ways to connect. You know, earlier you were talking about the students having to adjust. That's probably one of the populations I feel the most empathy for, especially the seniors of last year and the freshmen of this year. When I'm working with my young adults and teens, they don't have that experience that you and I did when we went to college. So it's important that we support them too. You know?
I completely agree with you. And, you know, I want to pick your brain as a therapist. As you know, in Florida, we're struggling with unemployment and an unemployment system that is making life it's very hard for some people. And we know therapy is not always free. We're getting there, right? But I remember when I first needed therapy, and I, you know, had my own insurance through work. We had the EAP, so I got my first 3 sessions free. But a lot of people don't have that luxury, right? So there's about 16% of the city is living below the poverty line, right? And 19% of adults are living without any health insurance. So how do we create something, right? I've been seeing these apps of like, you know, kind of immediate therapy access and things like that. But how can we, as a governing body, as a city that supports people, how do we do better about having that access? I know we need to invest in it, but it's like, you know, EAP is great, but like sometimes you need more than 3 sessions to you know, sometimes it's a lifelong journey with your therapist and that work. So talk to me about that. Like, how do we do better? And I know that our veterans, I mean, my mom had trouble getting her VA benefits, you know, enacted in North Carolina. You know, like we've got to do better about that as a city. But from a therapy standpoint, is there anything else that we could be offering or thinking about?
Well, I know right now a lot of therapists are either doing really low sliding scale fees or pro bono. So sometimes even just asking your therapist, they may do that. In the sites that you talked about, I think that would be most helpful is adding more funding to mental health, making it a priority. I know we're a tourist state, but mental health just needs to be more important. You know, I've worked in a variety of settings where it was an autistic school, so kids with autism aren't getting a lot of support financially. I've worked in intensive outpatient, so a lot of clients were on Medicaid, and sometimes Medicaid didn't want to pay. I've worked in a methadone clinic. I've worked in a rehab. I've worked in a group private practice. I work for myself. So what I would love as a therapist is that insurance and the government provide more funding and understand how important mental health is, period, for anyone to function. And sometimes it feels like insurance dictates what clients get to do. You know, the EAP, you're right, is great, but most people who are doing EAP, they're doing it because, you know, they may not be able to afford that long-term therapy, but it doesn't mean they don't need it. So I feel like if we had more advocacy on mental health awareness and support and more training in different areas, you know, like the whole thing with police, they need to be trained, in my opinion, in mental health stuff. That also contributes to people having mental health stress, regardless of what's going on in the news. Like, I feel like if you interact with the public, there should be some more training about that. There should be more funding, more support, more awareness. That would be my perspective on it.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you say that because, you know, in my notes, I have that, you know, our corrections officers and departments end up handling the grunt of mental health care. And, you know, a lot of those patients often end up in the system of the criminal system, or they end up on the streets. And that's one, it's a pressure point, especially in my district, District 4. I think one of our first town halls was about the homelessness issue. And, you know, some of it is people don't want to work. Some of it is people are trying to find work and don't have it. And another part of it is there's no room at these other places for my mental health support. So this is where I am because I can't get a job and I can't do this and I can't do that. And now every other day, the cops are escorting me downtown to only keep me for 24 hours. And I'm right back here. And, you know, we've recently had a lot of dialogue. You know, there was the theory that came up nationally about having more mental health professionals involved in nonviolent crime cases. And it's interesting, and I'm going to ask you as well, if you don't mind, but I've talked to a couple of my friends that have worked in, like, you know, places like the Salzbacher as caseworkers, or, you know, as counselors and other mental health professionals. And the feedback that I have heard is like, we already have so much on our plate. I just don't know if anybody is voluntarily going to be able to handle doing it in that way. And it's just interesting, right? Because I don't come from that background. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds like it could absolutely work. I'm in. And then I'm hearing like, girl, my days are already slammed with, you know, this burden, and it's emotionally affecting to the doctor or the counselor as well. And I was like, I didn't even think about that. And I've recently talked to an officer who is his niche is community engagement. And he was like, you know, we could do that internally in the force with more training, with having a mental health professional come in and do that work for us, so they're not actually doing it and putting them in harm's way. So I'm interested to hear your take and thoughts on that, you know, experience as a mental health professional. And then, as you said, seeing what we have seen in the community as well.
I think that it's valid that we do have a lot on our plates, but there are also a lot of us that are willing to make time in our schedule to educate other groups like the police and teachers and different things. So I think if it was offered, you might be more surprised at how many therapists and social workers are willing to do that. That's been talks with me and some of my other colleagues. We've talked about wishing that we could educate others instead of it only being just go see a therapist. Like, we're part of it, but if everybody's connected, if the teacher can recognize that the kid has trouble concentrating or acting out, not because he's a bad kid, but because maybe there's stuff going on at home, maybe he's hungry at bare minimum, with poverty, like you mentioned, being like or up there. So I think it's really important that we work together as a community to really educate ourselves on mental health. So yeah, there are some that would be like, I can't really do it, but I know that there will be even more that are like, I can make that time, even if it's just for once a month.
Yeah. And I think, that's the commonality that we all can at least agree on, right? There's got to be more investment and education to make this all work, right? It's from the top all the way down to the bottom. I struggled in school, and it wasn't because I was a bad kid. It was because I couldn't get this extra energy out in a different way right then and there. And the teacher didn't understand that, right? So like, what does that have on me as a 7-year-old? And then what does that look like on 12 and 16, all these very sensitive and special ages, right? That everybody's trying to figure it all out. And, I talk to her all the time. I'm like, I want to just grow up and have it all together. She goes, girl, I still don't have it all together. And I'm like, oh man. So, just that reality, right? Because it is a reality. You're never going to know everything and have it all together, but like having the education and the resource to at least figure it out and make better decisions and learn what you don't know is a start.
Yeah, Nicole, I wanted to jump in. This is a great conversation on increasing skills, as a community, right? At all different levels and layers of our community. So Paul just put in the chat, let me just read it to you. Paul, he's here with us on Zoom. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office now has a co-responder teams where a mental health counselor responds to a mental health related 911 call alongside law enforcement, so that the individual in need can get the right help instead of perhaps just traditionally a trip to jail. Yeah, so as a community, just a few teams so far, and Paul's typing as I'm talking, more is needed, right? Like, so as a community, we're going in a good direction. So I just wanted to offer that was coming in via the chat box.
I think that is a great start, right? And I think that, and I say it often, that we have to have a budget that reflects our priorities. And as a city of the people, we need to make sure we're investing in their mental health and, investing and making sure that people have the resources and education to do better for the constituents. And I know how sometimes those lines get blurred, right? But at the end of the day, it goes back to the fundamental question that I think all elected officials should, always ask themselves in every decision is, how is this going to affect the people, right? Like, how is this going to make District 4 better? What are the repercussions if it doesn't go that way? Do people know what's available to them? How are we communicating it? Those type of questions we need to make sure that we're asking of our leadership, because we are the people and we need to be prioritized over party, policy, whatever you want to call it. I want to be able to make that call. I live alone. If I got to make a call, I only have so many people in town that I consider family to call, right? And then if they're unavailable, what happens next, right? You call your public safety. You want to make sure that they are prepared and aware and willing to safely get you out of the situation that you're in, and or assist you safely in whatever situation that you're in. And I think that is so important, especially with what we're seeing. And you're right, Alisha, it's everywhere. I say that this has been the quietest time and also the noisiest time, because I've been in my little house, I've been with my little dog, but it's radio, TV, news, Twitter, Facebook, Insta, and I'm like, this is all in my face, but like, I'm in my little place. It's that dynamic that is so interesting, and I think that we're all kind of struggling with that, right? Like you said, we're working long hours. I look up and I'm like, oh, it's 6:30. I should have been logged out of work. Not doing that. I just actually typed real fast when you said it. I was like, make boundaries to end work, because I don't, and then move from one thing to another. And I know that I'm not the only person that does it, and that's why we're at dialogue.
Yeah, I'm going to step in and create a boundary here. Yeah, we have just a few minutes left, so I'm just going to jump in and lead us. So if you're interested in Nicole Hamm as a candidate and would like to see a shift and a change in our city, and you're excited, we would love for you to volunteer for the campaign. There's lots of ways to volunteer. You can drop literature safely at people's doors. You can also phone bank with us. We have power hours where we do it together. And also you could sign wave, which is a lot of fun. Just yesterday, Nicole got some fun feedback on the corner of Beach Boulevard and Parental Home Road that I'll let her share. But if you'd like to volunteer, it's NicoleHamm.com is her website. You fill out either the contact form on the front page or the volunteer application, which is on the volunteer page. And if you do either of those, or if you donate, because donations, it's a grassroots campaign, donations are always welcome. If you do any of those, you'll start receiving the weekly newsletter. So Nicole is running for Jacksonville City Council. Please vote for her on November 3rd. Tell all your friends and neighbors about her. I'm going to stop the screen share and hand this back to Nicole for a final farewell.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We will be posting some local resources, and there are two in particular in District 4 that I'd like to highlight. But I also want to give Alisha an opportunity to, give her information. She's obviously, as you have seen, an incredible wealth of knowledge and a resource. So we'll drop her information as well. But Alisha, if you don't mind, I just want to say thank you and then allow you to close us out.
Thank you for having me again. And my information, you can email me at yourfavoritetherapistallyj@gmail.com. Or you can call me at 904-414-3464. And those are the best ways to get in contact with me.
Yeah, and if you can't get in contact with Alisha, my therapist is also great, and she's in the district. I'll plug her in as well. But and we're very fortunate in District 4. We do have a big mental health center right on Beach Boulevard. So I'll drop that on the Facebook and in the comments as well for you all to look at, along with Allie's information too. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next week right here, Sundays at 3 p.m. And feel free to get in contact with us if you want to share anything. We're always on Facebook. Our emails are monitored, and we're for you, by you, powered by you. So we're all in. Thank you guys so much.